Hi, folks. Apologies about the schedule change. It was news to me as well. I'm we're running a little behind schedule, but I can understand they just want to squeeze as many talks in as possible to make sure that no one's disappointed. My name is Micheal O'Faulu. It's the Irish version of the anglicised name Michael Foley, which might be a bit more familiar. And I'm the CTO of Red Hat Mobile, which is based here in Waterford. So I'm very happy to be here at this Node event in my hometown. I'm going to refer back a bit to the nearForm talk on the opening day from Richard Roger, where he was talking about how Node fits into the global IT space. And I've got a few comments about that. The two areas that I'm passionate about are mobile and Node, and the platform that I'm responsible for in Red Hat has both of those components. And I believe that they're transforming the way that enterprise IT is structured. It'll be a slow process. It'll take at least a decade, I would say. But the people here are probably at the vanguard of that process. I'll talk a little bit about how Node is relevant to Red Hat in other ways than mobile, and a little intro to our platform. So what's happening globally in enterprise IT is that there's a seismic shift happening from systems of record to systems of engagement. These terms come from Geoffrey Moore, who's the author of the famous book, Crossing the Chasm, about how to roll out IT products. And you can say that it's between traditional IT that's focused on reliability, associated with sort of slow change and managing change to manage defects, to the requirement to spin things out really fast and engage with your end users. Gartner have called this the emergence of bimodal IT. Bimodal IT is a comparison of the traditional ways of doing IT with the fast track way of doing IT. Gartner's concept of bimodal IT could be regarded to equivalent to Geoffrey Moore's systems of record and systems of engagement. I'll publish the slides online. You'll be able to find. I'll tweet about it, and you can find some notes about it. I'll remind you of my Twitter handle at the end of the talk. There is some interesting debate around whether this is too simplistic and whether you might actually regard there as being three modes, but I'll stick to now to this two modes thing. So essentially, you've got the vanguard of new fast IT people, including Node and mobile, and you've got a traditional core IT sort of people who are resistant to this change. But in order to actually build successful systems, you actually need both, because the fast IT systems typically need to integrate with the existing systems which have all the huge amounts of investment of time and effort over the past 50 to 60 years, and they're not going away. We all know the sort of types of legacy systems that are still running. Our view of what a legacy system in the Node community is might be slightly different than the view of some other people in the community. But at the end of the day, they all have to be integrated together to build real working systems in large enterprises. So mobile is a catalyst for this change, and Node.js is the tool. You could say that the fast development speed and the ability to respond to line of business needs is ideally matched by Node. And mobile, typically client-side JavaScript is hugely popular as the way of doing mobile, whether it be Apache Cordova or just pure web on the mobile. And Node plays nicely with the more native coding approaches that are taken in iOS, Android, and other mobile ecosystems as well. So you can choose your tools for the job, but usually you've got Node.js on the server side. And as Richard Roger was pointing out in the opening talk, you could regard this as a process of transformation towards a digital enterprise. And what this really means is having the IT function of an organization allow it to innovate and to push forward and to make changes as the business needs, rather than dragging it backwards. Now, some people might not know about Red Hat and open source, so I just mention a few things. Red Hat is embedded in almost every major open source initiative in the world. The Linux Foundation being the most obvious, but also OpenJDK, Apache, Eclipse, OpenStack. And arguably, it's the world's first and most successful completely open source company. So the company philosophy is there are no products that aren't open source. Every product is open sourced. It was the first open source company in the world to reach $1 billion in revenue. And our financial year just finished in February this year. We were at 1.79 billion. So we're the most successful open source company around. We have about 8,000 employees. And even if you spun out just our middleware division, the JBoss Java EAP and its associated projects, that would be the second biggest open source company in the world. So needless to say, as a philosophy of the company, we're committed to open source communities as an engagement of equals, and all development in all projects is done in upstream projects as a philosophy of the company. Now, of course, with acquisitions, it takes some time to change the culture of proprietary software companies when they're acquired, so we give it a few years for this to happen, but it will happen with every single Red Hat product. That's the commitment of the company. So in terms of the Node.js Foundation, Red Hat has been involved in supporting the Node.js Foundation via the Linux Foundation, where there's been discussions on advice on suitable governance models and so on, and we're really, really pleased to see the emergence of the Node.js Foundation and the healing of the rift of the fork. We're currently in discussions with the Node Foundation about joining, as its goals are completely in line with our own aspirations. So we're hoping that we'll be able to bring that set of resources that we have in a pure open source company to support the whole Node movement. Because we view the success of the core Node platform itself and of the huge open source set of modules around it as a fantastic positive achievement of the open source community in general, and we want to be as strongly associated with it as possible. We love Node.js. For bare metal and for virtual machines, Red Hat Enterprise Linux fully supports Node.js. For Docker containers, we have special distributions of Red Hat called Red Hat Atomic. There's a version called Enterprise Linux Atomic Host that is the Docker manager. And then there is Red Hat Atomic Enterprise, sorry, the host is the host, and the enterprise platform is the manager. And when you're thinking about security and supportability of containers, don't forget that containers are essentially Linux OSs. So how secure and how stable and how supported your container is depends on what operating system there is. And if you were to ask who has got the best track record in the world of a secure baseline Linux operating system, I think you'd find it hard to beat Red Hat's track record in that regard. Thirdly, we have a polyglot platform as a service that's called OpenShift, which is fully open source, so you can download and play with it yourself. The version 3 was launched at the Red Hat Summit in July and fully supports Linux containers, Docker, and Kubernetes. So that's available now for download and install, and there are general availability of our enterprise version of that is being sold at the moment, which is essentially enterprise support for that platform. And then finally, and most importantly to me, is the Red Hat mobile application platform, which was acquired by Red Hat through the acquisition of Feed Henry, a local Waterford company here. And we've had our server side of these mobile apps that we manage in this platform based on Node.js since 2011. Interestingly, in all of these Red Hat enterprise supported products, the supported node stack is the same one via the mechanism of a software collection. So there's nothing to stop you deploying more recent versions of Node on these, but you can have full enterprise support via the software collection, which is exactly the same whether it's on a bare metal or in a container or running the next version of our mobile application platform. So, a few words about the mobile application platform. The problem that many enterprises face when looking at mobility is they start off with individual single projects. So, a marketing team over here builds a mobile app. An internal team here builds an app that has to integrate with some systems. And the typical problem they face is that all of the client-side mobile devices are on the public internet, and all of the APIs that they might wish to integrate with are behind a firewall in the enterprise. So say, for example, you want to do your time tracking on your mobile phone, or you want to integrate with your ERP system, or you want to integrate with XYZ. Now, one approach is to harden your APIs, expose them publicly on the internet, and then consume them from the mobile apps. But the danger of that approach is the expense. So you have to spend a lot of effort to make your APIs able to be exposed publicly on the internet, and it doesn't scale to large numbers of projects. So what we allow you to do is to deploy a single platform in one place, integrate your enterprise IT into that platform, typically via VPNs, and then securely using Node, allow client-side mobile apps to call those endpoints on the public internet. So the node that we deploy can be as lightweight as a simple lightweight proxy, proxying requests from the mobile apps through Node through to the enterprise IT systems. But what we find is as soon as people start deploying Node and start using it, they realize the power of Node to be a business logic engine, which is much more efficient and fast to deliver than the traditional more heavyweight enterprise stacks. So before long, you're transforming your XML into JSON, you're doing business logic, and you're using Node microservices to power your mobile apps. The advantage to developers and to the IT team is that all of your mobile apps are architected in the same way, and you don't have to worry about individually staging and hosting server sides for each individual app. They're just a whole group of them staged in the platform and managed. So this is the diagram of the architecture. So the mobile apps on one side just make API calls, typically to Express in Node.js, and they're routed through to back-end systems as appropriate for the particular application. The platform also provides what's known in the industry as MBaaS, Mobile Backend as a Service functionality, which typically means caching, storage, authentication management, and a range of other features. If you drill down into how each of these server-side apps are hosted, they're made up of JavaScript Node.js server-sides, caching layers, and MongoDB persistent storage, each one of which can be independently scaled to meet the demand of the particular applications. We actually have a free trial available using the older technology of OpenShift, which is Red Hat's open platform as a service. They operate a thing called OpenShift Online that's currently running OpenShift 2.2. So if you go to openshift.feedhenry.com, and the second URL there is sort of like a getting started guide, you can build and deploy an Android app in 15 minutes, or indeed a web services, a web client app equally quickly. You can download and build your own iOS app on your own desktop. In our free trial, we don't build the iOS apps for you automatically in the cloud, but in our full product, we do build your iOS apps in the cloud for you. We also support Windows Phone as a client. They're the three main types of client that we support. And we're working on the next generation of our platform, which targets this OpenShift 3 that I was enthusing about a few minutes ago, which is based entirely on Docker and Kubernetes and these Red Hat Enterprise Linux Atomic containers, so that you get the full flexibility of Docker and Kubernetes without the overhead of having to manage it yourself. OpenShift 3 was globally announced in July. The next version is due to be shipped in November, and it's a completely Red Hat project with upstream open source available today to download and install yourselves if you wish. I don't need to tell you guys about why Node is so fantastic, but just bear in mind, this takes a little bit of convincing of our typical enterprise customers of the potential for changing their mindsets from what they've used previously as their enterprise IT development languages. And as I say, we usually take a softly approach and say, you don't need to use Node for everything, but as they get to know it, they tend to increase their usage of it. Either whether they have an in-house team where they develop their own solutions, or whether they use a large solutions integrator to outsource their app development. So typically our platform comes into play when you're developing 10 or more apps, and some of our big customers are developing hundreds of internal enterprise IT apps. So you can see that scaling those as individual projects just doesn't make sense. It makes sense to use a platform. So in the Red Hat mobile application platform, we're really happy to be able to say that we've got Red Hat technology at all layers of the stack. So the mobile application platform itself, the OpenShift platform as a service, the containers running the Red Hat operating system, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and then potentially underneath that you can run Red Hat's version of OpenStack as an IaaS layer, or you can run it directly on bare metal, or you can run it in AWS or wherever you wish. But the point is that all of those Red Hat layers, when you sign up for a large enterprise contract, are fully supported by the whole Red Hat support process that has allowed Red Hat to become the leading open source company in the world. So if you want somebody to look after your open source, we think Red Hat's a good choice. Our vision of containers is to give this flexibility to developers to use containers directly at the operating system level or in the platform as a service level, and for, as the container vision is, that the containers are completely portable between those approaches. So whether you use Google's cloud-hosted service, AWS, bare metal, everything behaves exactly the same. Red Hat's open source vision is probably our biggest message that we want to get across to the Node community, which is that we believe in millions of open source projects, a significant subset of which we're leading and targeting towards our upstream commercial products. And our upstream commercial products become packaging and support of what is essentially a pure open source project. So any new feature requests that we have turn into upstream requests in the open source community, and we don't have any other commercial stuff that we're trying to bundle on and give you as added value as an enterprise customer. What we give you as added value as an enterprise customer is our commitment to supporting the thing and being there on the end of the phone 24/7 to deal with any issue, security or application layer. So thank you very much for listening to me. My name is Micheal and my Twitter handle's there.